Cigar Company is your one-stop shop for all your cigar needs. Whether that's a brand new humidor, a box of those new cigars you've been waiting for, a top-of-the-line cutter or lighter, a place to enjoy the finest cigars and spirits with friends, or the only cigars grown right here in the Sunshine State, we've got you covered. Come visit one of our retail locations for the ultimate cigar experience. Visit us online at coronacigar.com.
How about that cigar?
How about that cigar?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 209 of How About That Cigar Live. Thank you so much for joining us live on Facebook and live on YouTube. Please take just a minute, if you would. Share us out to your favorite Facebook cigar groups. Let everybody know that we are live. Join in the comments. Let us know what you're smoking. Let us know what you're drinking. And throughout the process of this evening's show, we're going to have some great guests on. If you have any questions, make sure to leave those in the comments as well. And for those of you listening on the audio podcast, thank you so much for making How About That Cigar a part of your regular audio podcast rotation here in the Corona Cigar Studios. It is a beautiful night outside. We have the big studio door open. We have our brother Raul Ramos sitting just over this direction, joining us live in studio tonight. The Minnesota Twins. I know we harp on this a lot, but
yeah,
they come off the All-Star. Yeah, you just like, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
They come off the All-Star break.
Yep.
And they're looking pretty good.
Holding on to first place.
And then we lose 3 in a row to the Royals.
Yeah.
So you got royally fucked.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Well, the worst team in our division, we lose 3 in a row. There's just no
words
explanation for it. NFL training camps are underway. I think, didn't you guys officially sign what's his name? I've
been so off on my Vikings news.
Okay.
The one thing I do know is Dalvin Cook. Did you hear where he's headed?
No.
So we'll talk to McTavish about this.
No way.
He's headed to the Jets.
Wow. Okay. That'll see. I thought you were a Giants fan, Raul.
No, Jets.
Oh, you're a Jets fan? How can you be a Jets fan and a Yankee fan?
Because
I thought it was Mets and Jets and Giants and Yankees. Okay, well,
I'm the oddball fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the oddball.
And also the Minnesota Wild signed Gustafson to a 3-year, $11.25 million contract.
Yeah, that's a good.
I'm not unhappy about that.
No, I'm not either.
He's a good goaltender.
Yep.
I think it'll be good to have him stick around for a while because Fleury,
he's getting old.
Fleury's old.
Yep.
And I don't even know if Fleury's going to make it through the season, to be honest.
No, but I think he would be a great coach.
Well, but there's also a lot of rumors floating around that we're going to lose Reeves.
Yeah.
We're going to lose Dumba. I mean, if we lose
but
both
Dumba's getting old too.
Well, he is, but he's still really strong and really big, and he's one of those physical players that we've got great players, but they're little guys.
Yep.
And we need guys out there to protect them. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen? But Minnesota sports is, Minnesota sports. Yep. It is what it is. But guys, this is one of our favorite shows of the year.
It is.
We absolutely love this. And so excited that we're able to get the band back together. We have the exact same group coming on as we have for the last 3 years. This is the 4th installment.
I feel like we need to make like a Hive Mind, theme song for this.
Hive Mind theme song,
yeah.
Ooh. Make it sound like an old 70s cop show.
Yeah.
Like Kojak or Mannix.
Or what's the other one with the I can't remember. Yeah.
It'll come to you.
Yeah.
Chips.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there we go.
That's right. So let's get into our main event of the evening. And as always on How About That Cigar Live, our special guests are brought to us by Drew Estate. And at the upcoming Drew Estate Barn Smoker events, every VIP attendee will receive a 12-count box of Liga Privada H99 Connecticut Corojo Flying Pigs as a part of the VIP ticket package. Also, Drew Diplomat retailers who register and attend any Barn Smoker can purchase as many as 5 of these 12-count H99 Flying Pig boxes to sell in their stores. Each 12-count box will have an MSRP of $246. Liga Privada H99 Connecticut Corojo Flying Pigs will only be available to VIP experience ticket holders and select Drew Diplomat retailers who attend this year's Barn Smokers. For more information, please visit barnsmoker.com.
So you only had to say it twice this time.
Was it three times?
3 times. What was the name of it again?
I'm not going to do this. I'm not playing this game. I'm not these super long cigar names. They got the 3 times. That's it. I'm done.
All right.
All right, guys. If you would please put your hands together and welcome to this magnificent show. Let's start with Honest Abe DeBabna from Smoke Inn.
Good evening, gentlemen.
See you, my friend. And now let's go with Mr. Charlie Minato from Half Wheel.
Hola.
Charlie, welcome to the show. And then let's go with John, the cigar surgeon McTavish from Developing Palates.
Thanks for putting me on, you filthy animals. Appreciate it.
Doctor.
And last but not
Doctor.
least, from Roma Craft Tobacco, Skip Martin.
How you doing? Can I ask up front where Charlie got the Cinemax soft porn filter for his video?
Not available in Nicaragua.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. Let's.
I'd like to ask you a quick question. Garrett, is like your stool like completely deflated to the bottom? You seem like an 8-year-old sitting next to Matt.
You know, it's really funny because when we started going to the trade show and meeting people for the first time in person, we were like, "Oh, Garrett, we thought you were so much shorter because you sit." Yeah, I do like to sit lower.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just more comfortable for me.
I don't think I ever noticed it before.
Right.
It's like when he's driving his car, he puts the seat all the way back and does the lean. Yeah, he just likes to relax.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Well, real quick,
Right.
Matt.
Yeah.
I wanted to thank you very much for this amazing treat that you have given us to smoke on the show. And I wanted to ask Skip, what is the best way to cut this cigar? Do you bite it? Do you cut it? Do you V-cut it?
No.
Do you cut it at an angle?
I would use it with a pair of scissors. Maybe a little bit of an angle.
Yeah, I don't have scissors.
Yeah, I just, for tonight's show, I was like, I'm going to pull something special.
But you do a little bit of an angle on your Perfectos.
Sometimes.
Anybody else have an opinion on Perfecto angle cut?
My opinion is that you cut it and smoke it. But
I don't know if I'd gotten one of those cigars. I'd give you my opinion. I thought we'd all get one of those.
Yeah. Where are the free cigars?
We're all just here for the free samples, right? Oh, see, McTavish has. Oh, that's the. Is that the Gran Robusto?
Pulled it out of the tickle trunk.
Nice. Yeah, these are
Special occasion. Seems like the right time.
Gotta love it.
It's a really good cigar.
Yeah, I'm excited. I haven't smoked one in years. I bought these in 2018, and I'm excited to see what they're smoking like today.
So let's go around and talk about what everybody's smoking and drinking. We'll start with you, Skip.
I'm smoking a Intemperance Volstead Blind Pig and drinking iced tea with stevia because I'm not allowed to eat sugar anymore. So.
No rum and coke.
Yeah, I don't want to be like Lazuka or Dex or with 900 blood sugar or whatever those guys had.
Yeah,
it's an epidemic in the cigar business. I'm trying to avoid being the next statistic.
Okay,
awesome. More power to you, Abe. What do you got rocking?
I've been working through the cigars I bought back from the PCA show with me. So I'm smoking one of Luciano's cigars, which I found out talking to you guys. I guess it's getting renamed. But
well, we don't know for sure, but it's possible.
Yeah, it's a good possibility.
But so far, I'm enjoying it. Smoking very well.
Awesome. Charlie?
I'm smoking Skip's 13th birthday cigar.
13th birthday cigar, nice.
Do you wanna take a shot at that name? Matt and I did on Wednesday. No,
I do not.
Quinquagenero.
I've attempted to pronounce it 20 times and I've gotten it wrong 21 times.
Quinquagenero.
Pretty close.
Pretty sure that's banned in Florida.
And and John, what do you got going?
So for the cigar, I got the Phosphor Connecticut. Obviously, I started in the green room, so I'm about halfway down already. And then because I got to get liquored up to go toe to toe with this group, going with the Wilson & Morgan Barrel Select Tobamori 1994 barrel.
Ooh.
So it doesn't actually go with the cigar, unfortunately, but that's the bottle
Goes
I picked.
really well with the green screen.
I was just gonna say that.
It does go really well with the green screen.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome.
It really is.
Well, I'm drinking. I'm going to smoke the same Casatores as these guys, but I poured a little E.H. Taylor small batch, and but yeah, it's time to get my cigar fight. What's Garrett?
This is a 2022.
Oh, it's 2022.
Yeah.
So you're drinking old water.
I am LaCroix. I don't want to say that.
Then don't say it.
Yeah, I don't know how to say
Is
that.
it barrel aged? Do they barrel age the water, or is it just water?
I think this is
It's can aged.
it's can aged. Yeah,
Mm.
Yeah.
in a plastic lined aluminum.
Get that nice aluminium flavor to it.
Mmm. Yes.
Well, I think I'm going to get
Yeah.
my cigar fired up, and we have a special new prop for the Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust Toast Cam.
Let's see it.
Yeah, let's see this here.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh, look at you.
Let's get there we go. There we go. All right, let's
All right, you ready to rock and roll?
let's do this.
When lighting your cigar, it is important to be patient, pay close attention to detail, and focus on the tobacco. In the same way, Steve Saka brings those same qualities to the ultra premium cigars of Dumbarton Tobacco and Trust. Patience, close attention, and focus on the tobacco are the qualities that Saka and Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust have become known for. From Silver Mesa to Umbagog, Dunbarton has a blend that will fit your palate, your mood, and any occasion. Visit dunbartoncigars.com to learn more.
What are we doing again?
That was the most awkward pause.
Smack his ass. Let me see you smack
Oh,
that
yeah,
ass.
yeah.
He's got a nice ass.
Here.
Yeah.
Mm.
There we go.
They really outdid themselves with
It really is a nice ass on that thing.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
All right, let's get this
Maybe
show
we
back
should have
in.
talked about how to light a cigar instead of how to cut a cigar.
I'm all in this weird contorted, like trying to do the reach around on the Sasquatch statue. Not the kind of reach around you're thinking, but the cigar lighting kind of reach around.
Right.
Right.
6 guys on camera talking about reach arounds.
Nice.
It's a great night.
You can put down 15-minute mark is when it went off the rails.
15
I
minutes.
think it went off the rails when they started talking about Minnesota sports.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty much how it goes off the rail. I agree.
By the way, football starts this week, so no more baseball talk. So football talk from here on in.
Well, McTavish, did you see the news about Dalvin Cook coming to your
Did I
guys?
see the news? How can I not see the news? Like, if I don't see the news, I wake up to 15 text messages, 5 instant messages, and 16 emails about my team, and I'm like, man, let me have a coffee before I start getting lit up. What's going on?
Just
the
ready for
preseason.
injuries.
Yeah,
Get ready for injuries.
injury time.
Bro, it's the Jets. You start the season ready for injuries. I'm surprised that Rodgers isn't out already with a tweaked hamstring.
No, it's what is it? Upper leg weakness.
Yes.
That was upper leg weakness.
Oh.
That's the
I get
the
that all the
go-to.
time, yeah.
Yeah, I get that all the time too. Yeah. All right, so 2 years ago, on the second edition of the Cigar Industry Hive Minds, so this would have been July of 21. I posed a question, the over/under, and I set the line at 2 years on cigar sales numbers.
Ooh.
Because obviously a lot of people were buying cigars, and cigar sales numbers were up for pretty much everybody, during that time frame. And I set the line at 2 years. As far as whether or not cigar sales numbers were going to remain at these, remain higher than pre-COVID, say 2019 numbers, or if they were going to go down. And John and Abe both took the over, and Charlie and Skip both took the under. Who was right? John McTavish, start with you.
Well, clearly, if you're going to side with anyone, you want to side with the retailer because he's going to be the optimist in the room. Skip's going to be the realist, and Charlie's going to be the pessimist. So I feel like I think the over's got it on this one.
Okay, Abe, what do you think?
What exactly was the stipulation again? I know it was sales, but
so the sales numbers in 2021, late 2020, early 2021 were really high because people were at home all the time, smoking a lot more cigars. And I said, are these sales numbers going to stay really high for 2 years or more, or are they going to drop down to, pre-COVID numbers? And we're at the 2-year mark right now. So
there's no way these drop down. There's no way they drop down to pre-COVID numbers.
So they're still up?
Yeah, they're still up.
Okay. Charlie, what about you?
Yeah, I think if it's a question of are they reverting back to 19, like we've got at least a couple more years, I would say, before that really becomes in jeopardy.
Skip, what do you think?
It's hard. It's hard for me to say. I mean, I don't know if you're talking about import numbers, that Charlie reports, or if you're talking about actual retail sales.
Sales.
But my impression is, if you took the entire United States market, the sales are down, and they have been down since at least last November. Garofalo and his people talk about. Of course, everybody's sales numbers, if you're talking about their sales numbers, are up, but in general, it's down. That's the consensus, right?
Yeah.
It may be down, but it's nowhere near pre-COVID numbers. I mean, it's still way above. We're still way. There's no way I could believe that this industry is anywhere near pre-COVID.
I mean, even
numbers.
the import numbers are substantially higher than pre-COVID.
Of course, back then we had $8 cigars. Now we have $20 cigars. So you sell half as many and do more, I guess. but I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. For us, if you look at our 2019 trade show, it was our biggest trade show ever. If you look at our trade show this year, it's probably 20% in terms of orders taken, 20% less than we did in 19. We still are shipping the same number of cigars every year. I mean, for us, if the demand drops from 4 million a year to 3 million a year, or 2 million a year, it doesn't matter because we only make 1 million. So I don't know I don't know exactly how the demand affects us. We have a lot less back orders than we used to have. So I assume demand is down, but I don't know overall. There's a lot of stores that just don't exist anymore. I think there's some stores that are doing a lot better because they do a great job, like Abe, like Two Guys, like Cigars International, and then there's stores that just don't even exist anymore, or that are on their way out, right? So it's hard to say.
Yeah, we just lost a shop here.
Yep.
Right in the Twin Cities area. Last week.
And why do you think that is, Matt?
What'd you say, Raul?
He's moving to Florida.
Well, he's moving to Florida. Whether that's the case, the actual cause for the store closing its doors, I can't say.
But he'd been flirting with closing and selling for the last 3+ years
since he opened the doors.
Yeah.
I mean, what I do know is that in 2019, right before 2020, like in October, November, there were factories laying people off. There was a lot of reduction in production, like factories, reducing Torreyes, and so there was a lot of demand constraint on the factory side because there was way too much inventories in the States for whatever sales was happening. And so across the board, factories were lowering production to the point where they actually were cutting workers. And that kind of hurt a lot of those guys when they tried to catch up when COVID started and the demand actually went up significantly. As far as right now, tobacco is a little bit easier to find than it was a year ago, but not a lot easier. I think in generally a lot of the production has become more rational than it was a year ago, if not lower. And so I think that's good news in terms of quality and stuff. But if the sales are if the sales are doing better than they were in 19, then that's good news around for me.
Yeah. Starting with Charlie on this one, do you think that, because we talked in the last couple of these shows about quality control kind of declining, and I want everybody's take on if that's still if the trend is still downward as far as quality control goes in your experience in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think we should be really careful about the words that we're using. Like trend is for both this conversation and the one about sort of sales and volume and production numbers. That's very difficult because on one hand, we kept referencing 19. Like sales are definitely better than they were in the end of 19, but they're also trending downwards compared to last year and sort of what's happened in 2021. In terms of quality, yeah, it's not great. It certainly is not what it was prior to 19. I think that there are two things that stand out to me. One is that the tobacco that was in inventory in 2019 and 2020 and whatever inventory levels existed, that, from what I gather, is largely gone, at least sort of on the open market. Not to say like how much tobacco does Skip have stored away for himself, but when Skip goes to Nica Prosa to go buy tobacco, sort of loose bales or loose polones, I can't imagine that it's anywhere close to what it was in 19. And more problematically, whatever buffer existed in 2020 is gone, because whatever tobacco was there that wasn't being used was purchased. And so I think a lot of companies had to dig deeper into their inventory than they might have liked to. Some companies got in trouble for selling cigars sort of in the tail end of 19 and early in 20, and then COVID happens and it becomes a real problem for them, and it sort of magnifies the issue. And then in particular in Nicaragua, and Skip I'm sure can talk way more about this, but the labor issue in Nicaragua is not remotely close to resolved. If anything has gotten, I would say, maybe it's not worse today, again, back to that trend thing, than it was a year ago, but it certainly hasn't gotten any better than it was a year ago. And so what that means is that the people that are rolling and bunching your cigars, they likely have less experience on average, and every factory will claim like, oh no, we didn't lose that many people compared to the guy down the road, but that's probably not true. It can't be true in half the instances. And the people that are checking your cigars also have far less experience than they once did, especially in Nicaragua because of mass migration out of that country.
Okay. John, from the stuff that you've been smoking kind of incrementally over the last few years, are you still, today in July of the end of July of 2023, seeing the same amount or slightly more with quality issues than you did? Do you feel like it's still an issue today? I mean,
and I'm not really one to be cautious about my words, but I do agree with Charlie that, when we talk about sort of what we're smoking at Developing Palates, keep in mind it's a very small subset of the industry. We're not smoking, regularly produced cigars from factories that churn out millions of cigars. We're smoking new cigars that have been released in a very small, short window. In many cases, we're smoking cigars from new companies. So I will say that, companies who produce excellent cigars are still producing excellent cigars. And like I can talk about like Hoyo de Nicaragua. I could go randomly pick up a Hoyo de Nicaragua or a Padron, and I'm confident that it'll draw right, it'll burn right, or Romacraft. It'll draw right, it'll burn right, no problems. But in terms of the sort of 100 cigars that we collectively review as a panel, 4 guys each, we're still recording probably a little bit better than 2022. But still a lot more burn and draw issues than I would sort of expect. And for us, the sort of construction and draw score, it used to be kind of a gimme mark. Like you essentially would assume it'd be 100% of the time, because that's how it was for years and years. You just didn't have burn and draw issues. So, I'd say probably 1 in 3 cigars that we review gets docked for either a burn issue or a draw issue. And that's surprising because, like I said, to us, that factor of the scoring system wasn't kind of designed to be a gimme, because up until that point, every cigar pretty much drew perfectly and every cigar pretty much burned perfectly. So
Yeah.
it is a bit of a surprise, but it is slightly better than 2022 anecdotally. I mean, I haven't crunched the numbers, but yeah.
Are the burn and draw issues more common than, and I know burn issues can be kind of caused by this, but is that what's more common that you have seen? Is it burn and draw issues, or is it taste and aroma that you can tell you're dealing with poorly processed tobacco that wasn't cured properly or fermented properly?
I mean, that's I don't know that I can answer that second question in the time we have, and I don't know that I have the tobacco knowledge to answer it appropriately. That's probably a good skip question. I would say that there is no consistent, like, more burn issues than draw issues. I'll go 3 cigars in a row that have to have a relight, which is just bizarre, and then I'll go 2 cigars that have draw problems. Like, and when I say draw problems, I mean a significant snugness where you can tell there's you feel the cigar and you can tell there's a bunching error, or there's simply too much tobacco in the cigar. But there's no consistency, and then occasionally we'll get the cigar that has both issues, which is unfortunate. But like I said, it used to be a gimme score, and now it's not. It's something we're paying a lot more attention to.
Abe, in your stores, are you hearing from customers or your managers or the employees getting feedback from customers that they're having more problems with cigars than they have in the past, or is it
so I find this funny because honestly, I think I'm the only one really qualified of everybody on this panel today to really answer this question, because we're really dealing with the end consumer, and I'm not dealing just from our experiences alone. I mean, we have a few hundred customer service emails every week on top of guys in the store. Now, we also don't have that phenomenon where we're trying everything or bringing everything new in. So maybe that's part of your experiences with the problems you're having. I mean, here's one I just got, I don't try to smoke everything at the trade show, because by end of day one, my palate's shot. So I like to bring it home, wait a while and whatnot. But I mean, here's a brand new cigar I never tried, and it's burning great, and it's drawing great. The construction's on point. I don't, on the retail level of guy, an organization that deals with literally tens and tens of thousands of consumers, I don't personally see anything that's been spiked way out of the norm for the last decade as far as draw and issues. And, we carry everything from newer brands to legacy brands that's been around for the decade. So, I mean, I haven't seen anything that's out of the normal. I mean, we still get that random a guy who says, hey, I smoked 3 of these, they're burning funny. I'll send us that box back and we'll replace it. But nothing like that would grab me and say, oh my God, man, we're having so many issues. So I haven't seen it on the retail level. Okay.
Skip, as far as the tobacco question goes about this in particular, as far as quality, how does the market deal with supply problems, and then companies who make a conscious choice to put cigars in the hands, or put tobacco in the hands of their rollers that they're probably certain is not ready to be put into a cigar? Well,
I mean, there's a long answer, but the short answer, first to what Abe said, is the subset of vendors that Abe's dealing with are the best of the best, right? So there's one kind of selection bias that he has that's different than the selection biases that you guys have. From a raw material perspective and from a labor perspective, Charlie pretty much covered it. What I would say is, the labor that goes into a cigar is actually a lot less than the cost of the raw material. So even if you slow the rollers down, even if you knock them on bad cigars and select those out, you're still losing the cost of the material. So no manufacturer wants to make cigars that are not good, but because because you're losing the material. If you have a good quality assurance program or good quality control program, what you're doing is you're looking at the cigars by weight, by draw master, by aesthetics, and you're taking those cigars out of the ones that get a label put on them, right? And those rates have gone up. My anecdotal information is those rates have gone up at factories. For people, for example, who have cigars made by a factory, their costs have gone up. And one of the things people have told them is, look, our segundo rate used to be, I mean, I can speak for myself personally. Our segundo rate on Palastanes used to be, 2-3%. Then it went to like 6 or 7%, just because we got a little tighter on aesthetics. We got a little bit tighter on how we gauge material mass and other things. That also, I think, is happening at other factories. So if you have to make 3% more cigars to make the 100% you can ship, obviously your cost of material and labor go up. I know from a raw material perspective that used to we could go look at tobacco, and if it was graded as an A grade tobacco and it was completed in fermentation, that tobacco almost always would be reliably well sorted and reliably fermented. And we're seeing a lot of things that have too much fertilizer. So even though it looks great, it doesn't burn right. We're seeing a lot of problems with tobacco that's not sorted. And the labor issue, one thing people don't talk about is there's less work put into the sorting and deveining or newer people doing it. And so the quality of the sorting and deveining has gone down. So the amount that makes it into a pack that shouldn't be there is higher. And also people have gotten stingier with tobacco as climate change has made tobacco. I mean, like this year in Ecuador, for example, almost the entire crop of Ecuador tobacco was kind of failed in the first go round.
Ecuador's not that important.
Yeah, right. So for us, I mean, it's Ecuador, Connecticut, it's Ecuador Habano, it's Ecuador Sumatra, right? We already have a problem with broadleaf. We already have a problem with Ataparaca. So it's just getting tougher. Climate change, the demand, the amount of fertilizer they're trying to use to do yields, the amount they're trying to get wrapper and other things out of filler crops. A lot of things, dynamics with the last 2 years have changed. How people approach growing tobacco and selling it. The market, because there's so much demand, people have just gotten sloppier with, it used to be people were like Leo Reyes. We buy a lot of tobacco from him. He will not let you buy tobacco that's not 100% ready because his process is his product. But and everything we get from him is always the same quality. It's well sorted. It's in everything. But in a lot of places, it's like, hey, why am I going to sell this to you for $9 when a guy's going to buy it straight out of the curing barn for $9 and I don't have to touch it ever again? And so, there's just been a lot of dynamic changes that make getting raw material harder. And I personally, I smoked a number of cigars from the trade show. I remember, like Abe does probably, and maybe other people, how bad after the boom was in the 90s, how bad the quality got. At the tail end of the boom, and I don't think we're ever going to get to that point because the factories are going to address those issues before they put it out on the market. The market just isn't as forgiving as it used to be. But there are a lot of cigars coming out that have a lot lower priming tobacco, that have less flavor, that have less strength. They're still making really good, strong, flavorful cigars. They're just charging $15 to $20 for them. And if you see these cigars in the $7, $8, $9 range, it's becoming more and more rare that they're putting the amount of work or the kind of quality tobacco into those cigars that they were even 2 years ago.
Yeah, and that honestly kind of segues into the whole pricing question. And we've talked about this before on the Hive Mind show about, pricing trends. Sorry to use the word trend again, but, prices we're seeing more and more. $20 cigars, $30 cigars, $80 cigars. And it's not like the market is vastly made up of cigars with these massive price points, but how do companies, I don't want to use the word justify, but I can't really think of another word right now. How do companies justify these high price points with also less and less availability? Is it truly an availability question? They're like the best quality tobacco and the best quality rollers.
There's two different issues. One,
okay.
The 25 and up cigars, the $100 cigars, that's a completely different thing. That's kind of more tied to the European people will pay $80 for a Cuban cigar. Why won't they pay $80 for a Nicaraguan cigar that's better, right? And also there are retailers that they only sell so many singles in their lounge, and they want $30, $40, $50 cigars. And if you're going to sit down and smoke for an hour, if it costs as much as going to a movie, you know, or a movie with popcorn and cokes and everything else, you know, $40, $50, then what difference does it make, right? What I'm talking about is the difference between you used to find really, really good quality cigars at $8 to $12. That same exact quality cigar now you're going to see, especially from companies that contract manufacture, or companies that outsource their sales and their distribution, because of the labor costs and other things. The exact same quality tobacco is more expensive. The labor is more expensive. Everything's more expensive. So most of the time, what you'll see now is that the whole entire spectrum is shifted over. The quality is still there. It's just now $4 more, and that's happened more rapidly in the last year than it had even in the 5 years before that. Anything over $20, $25 is packaging and marketing and bullshit. There's no, I mean, you know, you can hear somebody say, "Hey, I make the same amount of money on a $30 cigar as I make on a $10 cigar." That's complete and total bullshit. But a cigar has gone from $1.50, $2, $2.50 to land in the United States to, for some people, $3, $4, $5 to land in the United States. So that $3, $4 at the register is real cost that shifted the quality spectrum off to that side.
And Abe, I have to imagine for you as a retailer that if you didn't have customers regularly buying $30, $40, $50 cigars, you wouldn't put them on your shelves, correct?
I mean, look, we didn't put anything on our shelves that won't sell. I mean, that's just not what we do. We don't run museums. And look, there is a calling for that type of product. It's a smaller niche market, just like anything else. There's less Ferraris and Lamborghinis out there than there are Toyotas. I mean, it's just, you know, the way the world works. But more and more guys are doing it because they've seen certain people be successful with it. So, you know, that's part of this business that's been constant since I've gotten into it. When competitors see another competitor be successful in a field that maybe isn't, like 7 by 70, 7 by 80 cigars. You know, back in the day, we used to go through so many boxes because only 2 or 3 companies were making these mammoth cigars. Now there's a half a dozen, if not a dozen, companies that are making 7 by 70, 8 by 80 cigars. So it's now been diversified. So when a manufacturer, I believe, sees another manufacturer be successful in a certain segment that may not be overpopulated, they look at that as a piece of a market that they could possibly obtain. And, you know, at the end of the day, what we carry is literally dictated by the consumer. So, you know, we have a couple $100 cigars that sell regularly. We've been out of stock of the unicorns by Dunbarton Tobacco Trust. We can't keep them on the shelf. Now, is that an everyday cigar for most people? No. But it's without a doubt, I see it all the time, it's a celebratory cigar. I just had a baby, just sold our house, just bought our house. And I think for a lot of those occasions, more and more people are willing to say, "Hey, I slayed a unicorn. I grabbed a $100 stick." And Skip Martin's actually right. I mean, anybody who tries to claim they're not profitable or they make just as much money, that's baloney. But I think at the end of the day, that part of the story is not really what the consumer's after. The consumer's after that, I got something special, and I'm going to take this moment or this special happy occasion in my life, and I'm going to enjoy it with this cigar. And ultimately, that story transcends and works with the consumer base. So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, someone mentioned about, oh, what's the deal with box fresh cigars? Why do they make them? Well, they make them because people are buying them. Yeah. I assure you, no one's going to make something that the end consumers won't buy. And if they do make it and the consumers ain't buying it, it's not going to be around for a long time. So some of these companies that are now getting in the $100 cigars, I know Rocky's coming out with one, I know these guys, $300 one. you may see them stick around. You may see them, hey, this was their run, and it's never going to show up again because it didn't work. But at the end of the day, that's strictly dictated by consumers. Has the price of the cigars gone up? Yeah, I mean, it's gone up like everything else. I look at my electric bill, I almost want to freak out. I can't believe what electric's costing me. I go to the grocery store, I buy groceries, spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars. It doesn't even fill my fridge anymore. So I mean, it's just kind of where we're at where the country's at right now. Are there still $8, $9, $10 cigars that are quality, great cigars? Yeah, McAuliffe just dropped one. Their new black is one of the best new releases we've had for a long time, and I believe that cigar is like an $8, $9 cigar. So it's out there, and I think consumers are just going to find their way in the process. But ultimately, they dictate what's going to sell and what doesn't. And if you're a halfway decent retailer, listening to your consumer base, that's what's going to end up being on your shelves.
So, Charlie, kind of on the pricing part of things, a question for you, and I'm sort of making these numbers up, so just take it for what it's worth. But if we look at the cigar market, if we go back, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and let's say 1% of the premium cigar market, I'm talking New World, Dominican, Nicaraguan, Honduran cigars, able to be sold on U.S. soil cigars. Let's say 4 years ago, I don't know, and I'm making this up, 1% of facings were north of, I don't know, $20. And as that percentage continues to increase, maybe not by 1% a year, but it continues to increase, do you think we're getting close to a point where that's going to level off, or do you think that's going to continue to increase on a sort of regular basis year over year forever?
It's going to continue to increase.
Okay.
I have a less technical view of the reasons as to why companies are introducing more expensive cigars. I think it's pretty simple. With the exception of the COVID boom that we mentioned before, there are more cigar companies entering the playing field. The reality is there are basically the same amount of cigars being sold, once again with the exception of the COVID boom, on a year in, year out basis. And that just means the pie is getting split up into smaller and smaller chunks. And then I think when you factor in, and Skip sort of alluded to it, when you see, and when these companies see that their same cigar that they sell for $12 in the U.S., that European consumers are, foaming at the bit to pay $19 for it, because that's a hell of a lot cheaper than what they're normally paying for a similarly sized cigar, they look at it and go, well, I probably can add 50 cents here. And then when that goes through a retail margin, that 50 cents turns into a larger number. And you just sort of rinse and repeat that. And they can just do it on the backs of justifying it as labor's gone up, tobacco prices have gone up, everything associated with manufacturing has gone up. And that's true. And in some cases, I think some companies are passing on those price increases to consumers. But what we're talking about more in this conversation is not necessarily existing cigars that have been around for 10 years. We're talking about new cigars.
Correct.
And I did the math last year comparing, I think it was 10 companies at the trade show from 2022 to back to IPCPR 2017. And what I showed is that the numbers with just that random sample size proved that it's not the equivalent of a sort of 5% increase year after year. That the average price of the new cigars that these same companies were introducing from 2017 to 2022, those cigars in 2022 were at more than a 5% increase. It wasn't as stark as you would necessarily think, but it certainly is heavier. And I'd just like to add one last thing to sort of Skip's commentary about, like, it's harder to find or more difficult to find $8 cigars that are good. The one thing that we didn't really talk about enough in the whole construction, is it good, is it bad discussion, to me at least, is consistency. It's just a lot more difficult to find $10 cigars that are going to be consistently as good, all 20 cigars in a box, as it was 5 years ago, at least in my sort of neophyte understanding.
Okay.
Yep.
So, John, the Canadian part of this is, we know that it's very difficult to be a cigar smoker in Canada.
Sorry.
So is it just continuing to get worse and worse for the small number of cigar smokers there? And is it I mean, I sort of already know the question or the answer to this question, but do you believe it's intentional on the part of the government just trying to eradicate it entirely?
Yeah, I mean, of course it is. And, back when the legislative branch in Canada was trying to put through tobacco restrictions, increased taxes, I mean, that was a big part of the talking point. If you ask anyone in the legislative branch in Canada whether that's their goal, they'll say no. But I think you'd have to be an idiot not to understand that, of course, that's the goal. The goal is to eradicate tobacco, and the only way that they can do that within a framework of having people actually stand up and fight back is to do it like the frog in the boiling water. You can't boil the tobacco users in Canada. You have to slowly ramp it up. And the funny thing is that people are still paying $28, $27, $32, $35 a cigar here. And talking to my local retailers, they're still seeing the same sort of increase in sales pre-COVID. I don't think the numbers have continued to increase, but their sales numbers are definitely up. And I can have very candid conversations about the numbers versus pre-COVID. So, all these measures to sort of restrict that haven't really taken place, but on a long enough timeline, of course, that's the goal. And, there's a lot of measures in place to stop smoking in Canada. And when they discover that those measures haven't moved that dial enough, then they'll simply move it to the next level, which might be another... maybe it'll be an age ban. Maybe it'll be a generational ban.
No, the next one starts tomorrow.
What's that?
So it starts tomorrow, but there's a grace period. But you guys have new packaging restrictions that technically go into effect tomorrow,
Right.
like super aggressive warning labels.
Right.
Well,
But I don't think they're required, like enforcement-wise, until mid next year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they usually give a, I don't know if you call it a reasonable time frame, but usually it's like 12 to 18 months for implementation.
Yeah.
And the turnover of inventory isn't as quick here as it is down in the States. So there's a question of how to clear out your $350,000 or $400,000 worth of inventory that's going to take longer than 12 months to clear out. What do we do with that inventory? If it was pre-plain packaging, the answer was, well, you're hooped, and there's nothing you can do about it. I don't know how that's going to play out with the packaging rules, but it's all nonsense. I mean, no cigar smoker in the history of cigar smoking is going to stop buying whatever brand because it's got a warning label on it. It's a combination of they don't understand cigars, they don't understand cigar smokers, and I think the root summary of that is they don't care because they don't want to understand it. Their goal is to slowly reduce the number of tobacco users in Canada until that number is zero, and however long that takes and however many measures they need to implement to do that, they'll do it.
Gotta love that
Well,
behavioral engineering.
The cigarette industry is, cut cigarette smoking dramatically with warning labels. I mean, there's
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
so
Yeah,
when
that's-
I mean, you want to look at a model that didn't do anything, that should tell you what you need to know.
Yeah.
Well, here
Yeah,
in the
people
U.S.,
still
they've
buying-
actually, the court system has actually upheld that text-based warning labels are ineffective, and the anti-tobacco people have lost numerous court cases, including 2 at the Supreme Court level, about text-based warning labels for that exact reason.
as
Yeah, I
we
mean,
look
it's-
at all of the the economics of the cigar industry, we'd be remiss to not discuss the growing numbers in Europe and Asia. How is that affecting the American market? Charlie, do you have any insights there?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that it's going to lead to increased prices, as Skip alluded to, and as I mentioned 15 minutes ago. I think that these non-Cuban companies are going to look around as their sales in Europe are growing, in large part thanks to the, talk about prices going up, but for those of you that aren't Cuban cigar smokers, beginning last spring, Habanos SA, which is the company that controls Cuban cigars, introduced massive price increases, in some cases tripling the cost of a cigar overnight, particularly for the Trinidad brand and to a lesser extent Cohiba, but still sort of double for Cohiba, and then varying amounts for everything else. And they've continued to increase prices, maybe not at that same clip. But cigars that used to be sort of $15 if you were in a country that was friendly like Germany or Spain, those same cigars might be $75, $80 if you can find them now. So I think that the prices are going to go up. I don't suspect that they'll mirror the Cuban price increases, but I definitely think that that will show that there is more room for artificial price increases, if you want to look at it like that. And then obviously I think that it also means that a lot of these non-Cuban companies are having a bit of luck in a lot of ways, because it's not like they created this market, where even if the sales are slowing down in the U.S., like I think that we kind of all are in agreement that at least compared to last year, they probably aren't as strong, that it's giving them the ability to go into other markets and actually make money, which has not always been the case with these international markets. And I can only, speak on my end. I don't know how much the rest of the panel can, but, for us, we're growing in the U.S. In terms of Half Wheels readership, but the international market is growing at a much quicker clip, and notably China, which is not a market that we've really tried to do anything about. But China is now basically 10% of Half Wheels readers, and that is the first time there's been a double digit or really even above 4% of our audience has been in a country other than the U.S.
Well, and the China thing is also interesting because there's a possibility, and I mean, honestly, maybe this is happening already and I have no idea about it. But even if it's not happening already, isn't there a possibility that we can start seeing some companies start to set up shop in China on Chinese soil, start importing tobacco, start bringing in people to train rollers, start rolling cigars and aging cigars, packaging them and shipping them? And if so,
it's already happened, other than I guess the shipping back to the U.S.
Okay, so that's happening already in China.
Yeah, but I mean, it's been going on for the better part, if not all of the last decade, but it hasn't really been all that successful. I do think that there is going to be we're entering a different chapter when it comes to the Chinese cigar industry in a number of different ways. Number one, there's a lot more non-Cuban companies selling either directly or indirectly into mainland in a way that did not exist 5 years ago. Number two, my understanding is that China National Tobacco, which is a state-owned tobacco monopoly, the largest tobacco company in the world, my understanding is that they are much more open to the idea of sort of authorized and above board, or at least more above board than it's been, in dealing with some of the non-Cuban companies without sort of the crazy licensing that you had to previously get. And then the third thing, which I think is really kind of the largest change of the bunch, is that Universal Leaf, which is one of the largest tobacco companies in the world, and when it comes to raw material, is got a partnership now with China and is going over there to really train the Chinese. And I think unlike previous attempts where there was some concern by the people that everyone on this chat knows that were selling to the Chinese and were offering them some knowledge-based assistance, I think there was always some skepticism about the idea that they didn't want to give them all of the secrets because then the Chinese would cut them off. My understanding is that Universal is fully aware that this is basically a 3 or 5 year endeavor. They go to China, they sell a bunch of tobacco to the Chinese right now, and then they sell their knowledge and their expertise, and then, maybe they get some sort of royalty, but ultimately this isn't a 35, 40-year partnership that they're looking for. This is a sort of one-hitter quitter.
And at the trade show, I had a chance to meet with a Malaysian buyer and distribution company, and they talked about over the last 5 years, countries like Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Taiwan have tripled in their cigar consumers. It is a huge growing market, but many of those countries don't want to deal with China. There's like this anti-Chinese
in Taiwan.
In Taiwan, yeah. Yep. So they distribute to all of those countries, and
I really thought that joke was going to land better, but apparently not.
Just went right over his right over his head.
Well, yeah. Taiwan. Yeah, I get it. So my question, Skip, you've been in Europe for a while. Your numbers in Europe, talk about your numbers in Europe, and then also what have you seen from demand or your dealings with the clientele? Asian.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're not a typical person. I mean, the person I would ask about that probably would be people from Hoyt, Nicaragua, or the people from Davidoff. They're going to have a better, more rounded answer. For us, we're in a lot more countries than we used to be, but some of these countries you're talking about 10, 15 boxes a year, right? So it's not a lot. I mean, we sell about 20% of our production to Europe. That's probably about double what it used to be. Mainly because our distributor Schuster has just opened more countries to buying. For example, in Italy right now is very close to, in terms of volume of sales, to where Germany was before. So we're selling a lot in Italy, and in the UK as well. Since Brexit, we opened up a new distributor channel with a guy who has 5 stores in the UK, and he's selling probably half of what Germany is selling. So we could probably sell 100% of our production in Europe if we wanted to, and we kind of actually put any effort into doing that, and we'd probably make a little bit more money, to be honest. But I don't really, other than that, I don't have anything really to add to anything the other guys haven't already said.
John, on the you had mentioned that you've got some thoughts on this. I believe that's on the China piece of things.
China.
Not specifically on the China thing, on just consumption of non-Cuban cigars sort of in the international market. And I think, I'm I don't know if you would call it dual use, because I've been a non-Cuban cigar smoker, from New World cigar smoker, longer than I've been a Cuban cigar smoker. And so I've been involved in a lot of online Cuban cigar smoking communities for that period of time. And I can tell you that 10 years ago, if you tried to have a conversation about New World cigars with a Cuban cigar smoker, it was a non-starter. There was just no opportunity to have that conversation, and there's no point in even engaging in the conversation. And that really changed 2-3 years ago. The sort of 1-2 strike of Habanos unable to supply inventory to international markets, coupled with them realizing that the only way to sort of recoup that revenue loss was to increase prices. So you've got an international market that is used to smoking, or at least in the past might have used to smoking 60-70% Habanos to non-Cuban, and the strictly Habano smokers are moving over to New World in a combination of, because they can't get Cuban cigars and because the pricing has priced them out of the market. And I can tell you that the last really 24 months, I've had more conversations about non-Cuban cigars and brands and recommendations in 24 months than I've had in 11 years. So, there's a huge swath of predominantly only Cuban cigar smokers that are now, as much as 50-50, and some that have moved over entirely to New World, again, as a combination of they either can't get the inventory or they just can't justify the pricing, because they recognize that, in fact, all the things they thought they knew about New World cigars are completely untrue, and they didn't understand New World cigars. And now that they're sort of getting an education on, what inventory, what product is out there, and that it's actually good, and they've sort of moved past the bullshit, inclusive Cuban sort of nonsense that's always been in place, and they've opened their minds to it. There's a whole swath of people now that are consuming non-Cuban cigars. And to be honest, I'm not sure they'll be coming back. I don't think Habanos is going to be reducing their price for the next 4 or 5 years, conceivably, because they don't have the tobacco and they don't have the production. So
yeah,
at the current rate, basically the sort of regular consumer of Cuban cigars internationally, in a lot of cases, is going to be a lost consumer. They're just going to be moving over to New World cigars, and that's great for the New World industry.
So, yeah, and if you can create brands that have lower priming tobacco, that have some draw issues, some construction problems,
yeah, and they go right at home,
and use less fermented tobacco, it's more Cuban-esque.
Right.
And so So you
That's
know,
right.
you slide right into that spot.
I know that Skip's making jokes here, but like I also think as someone that was in Dortmund in 2013, like or 2012 actually, I think, like it's also worth pointing out that the non-Cuban companies were not exactly, for the most part, doing much in any sort of serious attempt to sell to these consumers. I agree with what John just said, that a lot of these Cuban cigar smokers were extremely closed-minded, and as some of them have phased out and new smokers have come in and new retailers have come in, that it's expanded. But the other part here was like, I remember being in Dortmund 10 years ago and listening to non-Cuban companies that were coming over for the first time and going to the international trade show. And they were like, yeah, we just brought over all of our mild cigars and all of our small ring gauge stuff, all of our traditional packaging stuff. And it's like, I don't like the people that are willing to smoke your cigars, the people that are willing to try non-Cuban cigars, they want the cigars that the Americans are smoking. They want the box press cigars. They want the big ring gauge cigars, not exclusively. They want the stronger cigars, again, not exclusively. They love the flavored cigars, again, not exclusively. And so turns out for, I think, most consumers, regardless of where you are in the world, you want good cigars at a good price and a lot of the same stuff that we want here in America.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example, and maybe if you ever have someone from Oliva Cigar on, it'd be a good question for them. But Oliva, and I traveled in hundreds of stores in Europe, I mean, for everywhere from Vienna, Austria, or parts of Austria, Czech Republic, over to Spain, and up UK down to Italy, and I can tell you, I don't remember ever seeing a box of Oliva cigars in any of the humidors, maybe one or two. And now they are probably, I don't know the numbers, but they're probably selling more than Davidoff at this point in the EU. And so the percentage of increase that Oliva cigars alone has gone through with a dedicated attempt. They bought and expanded distribution. They're owned by a European company that's really committed to
kind of the key.
Yeah, that's committed to selling in the EU, and they did it at exactly this right time where this inventory thing happened. So if you want to talk to a company that's killing it in the EU, it's Oliva.
Yeah. A question for Abe. Let's put this scenario together that next year, and this is super far-fetched, but just go with it. So next year in March at the PCA trade show, this brand new cigar company sets up this big, beautiful booth, Flor de Beijing or whatever, some new brand.
You could say El Septimo.
Yeah, some new brand from some new brand where the cigars, the tobacco is imported to China. The cigars are rolled in China. They're packaged in China and shipped to distributors in the U.S. And again, I'm not saying that's a thing. Just roll with it. Are you going to spend time at that booth? Are you going to talk to them? And if you smoke the cigars and they're good, are you going to carry them?
I could tell you that I seldom went and saw a brand new company who it's their first year at the trade show and we bought the line in. It's too much work as an organization. Look, as a retailer, me personally, if I'm bringing a brand in, I do it with the intent that I don't want to see the brand fail. So it's a lot more than, hey, I'm just going to the booth as a new cigar, or even whether I like it or not. It doesn't translate well. It's understanding what their business model is, their business plan. It is something that we could help build this brand and let it grow within our organization. So ultimately, that scenario of me going to a trade show and seeing this Beijing, but if they've come out and by the next year I've seen a lot of chatter, I've seen consumers smoking it, some of our consumers may ask of it. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm gonna bring in whatever my consumer base wants. That's how I make a living. That's how I pay my staff, pay my rent, keep my lights on, feed my kids, etc. So as a good retailer, that's my job. I need to provide what my base wants, what I feel that they're asking for, and what I feel that will sell ultimately. So I don't know if that scenario translates well to us, but at the end of the day, another thing is, Charlie mentioned it too. and John about what the model was and where cigar manufacturers are pricing it and why they're pricing it more expensive, and then they're trying to justify it with added cost. But at the end of the day, there really is no formula in that any manufacturer has to set a base. I mean, obviously you have a margin that you have to make to be able to thrive and survive and grow and pay your staff. But we all know that there are lines and brands where their cigars are being sold well above that necessary margin. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's something they need to justify. I don't think, we've kind of gotten this in psychology that, hey, this is a keystone industry. It doesn't have to be a keystone industry. Most stuff, you buy shirts or clothes, it costs $10 to make, people paying $100 for them. At the end of the day, the consumers have to realize that they really control this at the end of the day. If something you like keeps going up and up and up and up, and you keep paying for it, and it's, whether you feel it's justifiable or not, that's what's going to happen. So I think it's going to get to a point where, I don't know. I really don't know, because everything now is shifted. So, your $5 to $8 cigars from pre-COVID are now your $8 to $10 cigars. I don't know where that trend lies, but ultimately, like if manufacturers keep increasing that margin because they're feeling they can get away with it in Europe, at some point, I think the consumers are just going to say, well, I need to find another $10 or $12 cigar I like. If that doesn't happen, then the prices are just going to keep going up, just like anything else in the world.
Yeah.
I would be excited to try that new Siberian wrapper.
The Siberian?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's very.
Just for the record, there was a Chinese cigar company that showed up at multiple IPCPR conventions and trade shows, not recently, but Great Wall was there. I would suspect doing zero business for the 2 or 3 years in a row that they showed up. I think what's more likely to happen first with any sort of widespread, and I would not consider it to be hundreds of stores, but certainly dozens of stores, is going to be in Altadis' sister company already tried this in Europe, is going to be to take some of that Chinese tobacco and mix it with other things and then sell it under an existing label. They tried it with a product called Vega Fina Fusion, which I think may have actually been made in China as well, if I'm not mistaken. But I think that the American market's probably not ready for full-on Chinese cigars just yet.
Okay. One of the things we talked about on the first ever Hive Mind show, and this was in the middle of, 2020. So
did you, I'm sorry, I got to interrupt you. Did you ever answer the question? Did I miss it on who was right on the prediction?
Oh, on the 2-year
under
sales numbers?
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever?
Can you please write it on a $5 bill and send it to Abe?
Well, I think I'd say it was the over that won. And I don't think Garrett or I made predictions.
I'd have to watch the show again.
Wait, you'd say, or you mean you didn't research the answer before you?
No,
It was a 7-hour show. They didn't have time to prepare.
I know that
it's been 2 years, Charlie.
Charlie and Skip took the under, and you, Abe, and John took the over.
If you just assume Abe is right, you're going to save everybody a lot of time.
Yeah.
And don't you have a sign on your desk that says that, Abe?
That was given to me. Yes, I do.
Yeah. just to start this conversation, assuming I'm right, it will save a lot of time.
Save a lot of time.
Well, it's like a T-shirt my dad used to have that said, "I would apologize, but then we'd both be wrong." Didn't go over super well.
And the sign right above that one says, "I'll be smarter. You be nicer. I'll be nicer if you'll be smarter."
That's a good sign too.
I like that.
That's good.
So the first one of these Hive Minds we ever did, July of 2020. There was no PCA show that year. A lot of weird stuff was going on in the world, but so we talked a lot about, the PCA, the organization of the Premium Cigar Association, went through some struggles. They don't always make the best decisions. We don't always like the way they handle things, back in the day and things like that. But, that was 3 years ago. And I feel like from what I've seen, based on my experience in the last 3 years of dealing with them directly and seeing other people dealing with them, that things have gotten better, that they have improved, both from a communication standpoint, and the work that they're doing outside of just the trade show, from a legislative standpoint and things like that. Starting with John on this question, do you think the PCA has shown improvements in the last 3 years?
Well, just so we put it in the proper context, if the PCA had done any worse, the PCA wouldn't be around. I mean, at the time where the show was canceled in 2020, the PCA was cash negative. They had exhibitors pulling out. Everyone was upset with the PCA. The last major idea, the Consumer Con, was widely rejected and created massive animosity in exhibitors and retailers. So, starting from that point, I feel like you can't really do anything other than improve, or you're, no longer exist in an organization. But yes, they absolutely have, in a positive way, made not only incremental improvements, but I think significant improvements in terms of how they're actioning things, that they're taking feedback and actually making a plan and executing on that plan to deliver on those ideas. And I think, 2023 was probably the first trade show in a long time where I can't come out and just do 45 minutes of negativity of all the things that went wrong, because, a lot of things went right, and the things that did go wrong weren't really wrong. It was just a exercise of, learning to do it better for the next time. And I get the sense for the first time since I've been attending the trade show in 2013 that they're prepared to take that feedback and execute it better for the next trade show and the next trade show. And that's what a successful organization does. So, I think we've done a course correction, for lack of better explanation. I think that things are headed in the right direction. I think people are excited to attend the trade show. I think exhibitors are excited to be back at the trade show. There's a lot of good energy at 2023, and it felt like a real, I don't think there's any one thing at the trade show that was blew my mind. I think it just felt like a true business trade show where people were going there to do business. They're happy to be there. The amount of complaining was minor, and it sounds like a lot of people are already looking to already have booked for 2024 and are already planning around that. So it seems positive.
Yeah. Skip, what about you? You think they've made improvements in the last few years?
Well, I'd repeat the one thing that John said, which is where there is constructive feedback, they are demonstrating that they're able to take that now and turn that into change that repairs or improves whatever it is that the feedback was about. I think the Developing Palettes episode with all the different people covered this at length, and I think it was a lot of good information if someone wanted to listen to that. But the one thing I heard out of that conversation was, at least from Jay Davis, was that they actually gave Scott Pierce more of a ability to steer the ship and to do things across the board. And I think we finally are recognizing that it is a manufacturer-driven organization, and the feedback from the manufacturers, it seems to be making its way. I still wish there were more retailers that came. I still wish we could get a better grip on the cost of the show, because the ROI really just isn't there. It's a straight up marketing cost for us. We're not going to sell one single more cigar because we came to the trade show or we didn't. In fact, the year we didn't go to the trade show was our most profitable year we ever had. So we want to go. We like to go. We like to be there. You can see we have a much smaller presence. Just to rationalize the cost again. You see the booths getting lighter and smaller, and I'd like that trend probably will continue as people rationalize the ROI. We talk a lot about the PCA in a show that's really consumer facing. It seems like maybe I'd like to see the conversation shift more to talking about the CRA, because now that we're not in the middle of the heat of a regulatory thing like we were, I'd like to see us get our consumer-driven organization, which also is a manufacturing-driven organization, to be really consumer-driven and everybody who smokes cigars to be participating and contributing. And I'd like to see that organization, at least from a political activity and also from size and scale and importance to the industry, become the premier organization. We're a long way from that, but I think if we shift the conversation away from talking about PCA, which is really just a trade show organization that does some regulatory stuff, to the CRA, I think we would do better as a culture and as an industry to focus more on making CRA stronger than making PCA stronger or different, I guess.
Okay.
I would say.
Abe, what are your thoughts on the improvements or not improvements by the PCA organization over the last few years?
Well, a couple things. I think John nailed it best, which really is, there's really no, it only had really one direction to go in. Have I seen improvements? Yeah, but it's improvements at a sloth pace. And I think the real problem here is you have to understand the internal structure of the organization. Skip mentioned that Jay said that they're giving Scott more power. I hope that's the case, because the model or the way it kind of always ran is, these 10, 11 board members, which are made up of retailers, kind of make all the decisions, and then they would use the CEO or whatever they call Scott's position these days as the executor of those things. And you have to understand, first off, these 10, 11 people that sit on the board are volunteers. They don't make a salary. They're not getting paid. They volunteered to do this. And some of them are good retailers. Some of them are average retailers. I don't think it's a room full of ground shattering, sound barrier breaking people in this industry. But it's hard to get anything done when you're trying to get 10 people to agree on something. And 10 people who meet on a phone call once a month and try to make decisions. I spent 3 years doing it on the board with them. I think if you really want to see major improvements, major changes, that model has to be let go, and they have to put somebody in charge who literally makes decisions. In my organizations, we have a lot of times where we have things that we have to fix, and how do we do it? And one of the biggest things was our Great Smoke event the year COVID shut it down, whether we were going to have one or not. We spent 3.5 hours in a room trying to figure out what we were going to do before we thought the digital experience. But that's what the board should be. It should be a soundboard for the guy who ultimately is just going to make a decision. And that's what I do. I bring in 5, 6 of my people on my team, and we talk, we bounce around ideas, and ultimately I come up and I make a decision, and then everybody executes. And I think until we get to a point where that kind of model is done at the PCA, where, hey, listen, we're hiring you, you run it, you do it. You want our feedback, you want our input, you want our advice based on our experience and years in here. Great. That guy does a great job. He's still got a job next year. He sucks. He's gone. You get somebody else, or give him 2 years to figure it out. But either way, it's never going to move any quicker or any dynamically or any major thing where you walk in and say, holy shit, what happened this year? I think until that kind of thing gets implemented. In regards to CRA, and I don't know if Skip saw our show this past Saturday because we kind of talked about it. The biggest problem with the CRA and why it's really never going to become anything significant as far as what it should be, let's put it that way, is I was one of the very small amount of people that actually started that whole thing. And we met in Houston and started talking about it. It was a handful of us. The whole concept was it was supposed to be a consumer-driven organization. If you're going to create something that's going to fight for the rights of, ultimately the industry, but based on what consumers want, it was supposed to be modeled after the NRA, which is very consumer-driven. You're never going to go to Washington, D.C. and have any kind of leverage based on a couple thousand retailers. You need 500,000 consumer base or 1 million members like the NRA and stuff like that. That's where you're going to get any kind of real leverage. And they've never successfully been able to make it a really a consumer organization where they're funding it and it's driven by consumer base and connected to the consumers, where consumers are proud. They're walking around like NRA members, big stickers on their trucks and something like that. It's another trade organization. It's another one that's basically funded and run by the manufacturers in the industry, and that's never going to let it get to where it needs to get to be. I think their key thing is they need to bite the bullet, figure out how. They need to get a national spokesperson like Charlton Heston was for the NRA. I think Joe Rogan would be a great candidate. We talked about a couple different candidates on KMA this past Saturday. I think a guy like Joe Rogan could put a face on this. He already is into cigars, talks about cigars, smoking cigars on his show. He's a dynamic person that, this guy gets his followers to contribute $5 a month. You're funding the CRA, and you're getting, maybe, 250,000, 500,000 people all of a sudden signing up. So I think they need to figure out that dynamic if they ever want the CRA to become truly what it was designed to become from inception.
Charlie, what do you think about, and I love those points, but I want to expand on that in a minute. But first, I want to get Charlie's take on PCA's progress and improvements possibly over the last few years.
Yeah, I think there's been some positives. I mean, one, they're still here, which certainly in 2020 was not necessarily a guarantee. I think in terms of the trade show, which is how 99% of the interactions with PCA in the industry happen, I think that it's been some positives and negatives, but certainly the trade show's in a much better place than it was in 2021. Obviously getting some of these larger companies to come back and recommit, moving the trade show to the spring seems to have added some excitement. So I think that is positive, and I think there have been some, small improvements with communication and other things, but I think that it's still a problem. And I also think there are two very, very large disconnects. Skip talked about one of them, which is that the manufacturers are the ones that fund this organization. My guess is, doing some educated napkin math, something like 90 plus, probably close to 95% of the money comes from manufacturers. Almost none of it comes from retailers. And there's a big issue because the people who sit on the board, and not just the board, but mainly the executive committee, which truly is the one that holds all the power, it's 5 out of 6 of them are retailers. And not only that, 5 out of 6 of them are retailers, and they're basically the same type of retailer. They're brick and mortar retailers, multiple stores. Obviously, Mary from Smoker Friendly is an outlier there, but it's not like you've got a diverse group of retailers where on one hand you've got a single store operator that's relatively new to the business, and then you've got CI and the big players also on the board. It sort of draws from the same homogenous group of people. So on one hand, the money is coming from almost exclusively manufacturers, and it is being controlled by retailers, and that causes some issues beyond just like the obvious. I mean, like one of the things that stands out to me is a real black mark on the PCA is that the most recent part of the federal lawsuit that was extremely successful was paid entirely, at least the outside counsel, was paid entirely by CRA. PCA, to my knowledge, has never offered to refund or help pay for some of that money. I mean, that was at a time in which PCA didn't, was trying to really cut costs and was furloughing staff and things like that. But, I think the message they sell to everyone is that, hey, we do all this work legislatively and for regulations. And then when you look at the numbers, it's a bit of a different story. And that leads to the other like giant elephant in the room that no one really cares about, no one wants to talk about, which is that from 2017 till 2020, the IPCPR/PCA, they rebranded themselves from IPCPR to PCA, was spending at a minimum $1.3 million on outside legal and lobbying. In 2021, which is the most recent set of numbers that we have from them, they spent less than $300,000. I think that the vibe around the organization would be very different if that was something that was known about amongst manufacturers, let alone retailers. And the one thing I can't help but, I mean, I could talk about this for days, but we only have 7 hours. The other thing that really stands out to me is like,
What? Sorry, Justin's going crazy with the button bar.
Yeah. No, you're good. The other thing that stands out to me is like I don't think the retailers care all that much, let alone like the manufacturers who I think care a little bit more. So this idea of like trying to get consumers to care, I mean, let's deal with our own house before we start trying to go after the big fish.
Well, and so Ty, do me a favor, unmute Abe's mic for a second. Go ahead, Abe.
But not Skip's.
I wanted to clarify about the consumers caring for the PCA. Is that what you're talking about?
No. What I'm saying is that I feel like, and maybe you disagree with me here, Abe, I feel like most of the retailers, even the ones that are at PCA, so the PCA members, I feel like most of them don't really care about the regulatory stuff until it's legitimately in their backyard and the yard is on fire. And
That's
so
been the problem of our industry since the beginning of time.
Great. So we're on the same page there. So my
Yes.
point here is let's focus on the people whose incomes are directly affected by regulation and getting half of them to not just buy in as PCA members so they can go to a trade show, but half of them involved to the point where they're sending an email a year to somebody regarding regulatory stuff before we try to bite off this massive consumer base that's going to be very, very expensive and is going to have up and down returns, I think. I don't think it's going to be as easy as Joe Rogan and $5 million and somebody
The
special.
consumer
I think it's
base,
going to take a lot.
I was talking about the CRA.
No, I get what you're saying there. My point
Right.
is like we have, let's call it 2,000 retailers in America. Let's get 1,000 of them to the point where they are donating money in some fashion, whether it's a PCA membership or something else, and where they're doing something, just anything on the regulatory front other than showing up to the trade show. And oh, by the way, the manufacturers are only slightly better than this, including like the CRA. One of my biggest complaints about them is why isn't Skip a CRA member? Why isn't Crown Heads?
I'm a CRA member as
but
a
like
consumer.
But why isn't Crown Heads a CRA member? Why isn't Miami Cigar Company a CRA member? I don't get the sense that outside of the 10, now 9 companies, thanks to STG buying out Bradley.
I can answer that question for you.
Have they
sorry
called?
to interrupt you. Well, I got a 2-hour hard press from Pete Johnson about CRA. So and Glenn Loop, buttonholes me every time I see him. And look, I'm not of the same mindset you are about how hard it is to get consumers engaged. Consumers are more engaged today than they've ever been with these kinds of organizations and activities. It is easier to engage consumers with social media than it used to be with traditional channels. I think the problem is, again, in a nutshell, you try to get retailers engaged, or you try to get manufacturers to give more money to an organization that's ostensibly a retail organization, but really isn't funded by the retailers, and retailers not showing up was the biggest issue. So you just kind of threw your hands in the air and said, okay, now it's manufacturer funded.
I don't think the retailers not showing up are the biggest issue, Skip. The retailers, even if all 2,000 of them showed up, that number that I was throwing out earlier, the 90-10, which is a very flowery breakdown.
Right, but
here,
I'm not just talking about showing up.
We're talking
to
about getting into
show.
like 85. No, I'm saying if all of them were paying the $450 a year to be members of the PCA, it's not very much money, unfortunately.
Well, what I'm saying,
the retailers need to be paying thousands of dollars a year to make a difference.
I agree, and they
we are
set up
so far away from that.
They set up a pack for retailers to do that, and retailers just didn't give, right? So, look, my greater point is this: you have to manage things that you can measure, and you have to measure the things that get you to the goal that you want. The problem has been in a lot of ways that the goal that we wanted to get to is not the real stated goal of the organization, right? So there was a set of manufacturers that had kind of influence, and a few retailers that had control over the PCA. There were manufacturers that didn't have enough voice in the PCA that they kind of created this. They kind of co-opted CRA to become their, hey, we're going to do things our way, but we're going to do it through the CRA. And thankfully they did. Some of them did that because, like you said, that was the most successful kind of defense we had against the regulatory problems in the last 3 or 4 years. When I was asked to give money to the CRA as a manufacturer, the question I always asked was, how many consumers are active? How are we measuring that? Are we putting our resources into getting more consumers active and engaged? Are we doing what consumers want us to do? Or is this really just a shadow organization so you can walk into a Senate office and say, hey, he's here with retailers, he's here with consumers, and really they're both there to represent 15 manufacturers, right? And so for me, I really do believe in the mission of the CRA as Jeff and Abe and those people established it when it began. And it kind of became something else. If we went back the other direction, you would see everything that came. Every time I was on something like this talking, I would be talking about consumers being engaged. I don't have a microphone like Joe Rogan, but I would be giving money. I would be giving money to get more consumers. I would be personally.
But Skip, I think it's got to be something other than the CRA. It gets back to your same criticism of the PCA, which is that if one group is giving the bulk of the money, how on earth can the other group get their interests served? And the reality is,
I don't know if we're going to solve it here. I know there's 2.5, 3 million cigar smokers out there that don't want to look like Canada, right?
The powers and the people. You need an organization that defends the right of the people.
That's right.
It's bigger than the manufacturers. It's bigger than the retailers. You want to talk about money? That's where the money's at. The CRA was always supposed to be a people-driven. It didn't matter what this manufacturer wanted or what this man. It mattered what the membership of the people of America wanted. If you don't get that, then you really don't. And that's the problem. Why guys like Skip or whoever Crown has, they don't feel like they're being represented, or it's not. It's a drowning battle for them. And I don't know if there is that thing. That's why you have to let the people be the voice, because at the end of the day, the people are all our consumers. And I think
we don't have the luxury. The cigar industry is not on your CNNs, your Foxes, your MSNBCs.
But we're all over. We're all over social media. We're in people's faces in the retail shops. So you don't have to have those classic media channels, right? We reach consumers. I mean, I spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year as a company traveling to talk to consumers to sell a box of cigars, right? I can absolutely talk to them at the same time about getting involved in making sure that we don't look like Canada in 4 years, or like Hong Kong is trying to do right now.
But if you can't get the retailers to do that, we may not be equipped for the consumers.
Majority of consumers aren't watching podcasts. Majority of consumers aren't reading. They're not going to Half Wheel. They're not getting any of the magazines, and they're just not getting involved because there's no incentive for them. They just want to enjoy and get their cigars, and they're blissfully unaware of the threat that they have in the cigar.
A lot of retailers.
I would argue the majority of retailers are in that same boat.
Yeah.
Look, if I was a retailer still, hand to God, I would absolutely consider saying, unless you're a CRA member, you cannot buy from me. As an example, right? I would absolutely say, I want you to you have your hand on the oars, and I want you to be involved in this fight with me. I'm not going to give you $60 worth of cigars to get a $35 membership and pretend like your voice matters. I really want your voice to matter. I want my store to have 200-300 voices. I want to have meetings. I want you guys to tell me what's important to you. I want to inform you about what's going on. And I'm not saying 1% of the retailers would do that. As a manufacturer, if I had a way to only sell cigars to people who had a CRA membership card, I would strongly consider that, right? Because I only have to sell so many cigars, and I know my company won't exist unless we get a consumer-driven organization that really works, right? But you mentioned the NRA. Last thing I'll say, Abe. You mentioned the NRA.
Yeah, that's right.
The NRA fell apart and is falling apart when it stopped being a consumer organization. When it started being driven by manufacturers directly to politicians. Yep. And they lost the voice of people. When George Bush Sr. got out of the NRA and people started stepping away from it, and then people started catching on, then you had all the fraud and corruption, all the other stuff. That organization, whether it has power or not, I don't know, but there is still a consumer base of Second Amendment advocates who are strongly supportive of the things the NRA used to stand for.
Yep.
That are looking for a place to be engaged, and the same thing is true in the cigar business.
I canceled my NRA membership 12 years ago.
Yeah, I did too.
Right.
But like you were saying, Skip, is you had companies like Winchester and Smith and Wesson that were requiring retailers to be NRA members, doing exactly what you said. If you want to sell my guns, you need to be a member of this organization.
Well, but then you have to make sure the organization is actually representing the voice of those people. You can't just say, "Hey, consumers, you have to be a member of this thing where only eight manufacturers have a say-so," right?
Yep.
They asked me for money. I said, "Look, I'll give you the money, but I want a fiduciary relationship with the attorneys. I want the attorneys to inform me what's going on the same way they inform you. I want my voice to be heard, an equal percentage, so that if I say, hey, I want us to go for whatever kind of regulatory position, that it means something." And it never would, so I never did. But if I'm going to demand consumers be a part of an organization to buy my products, I want to make sure that organization is listening to them, right? Not to me or to whoever.
Yeah, Abe, go ahead. And I know you got something. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say I agree with Skip. See, the psychology of motivating the end consumer is possible. You can make people wanting to be a proud card-carrying members of the CRA, stickers, I think. But as dynamic as Skip is, he's limited. There's a large percentage of the cigar smoking community that is not on social media. And that's why you need somebody as dynamic like a Joe Rogan or somebody along that line to be a spokesperson, because
Or Guy Fieri or
Guy Fieri, that kind of person can dynamically make that organization become what it needs to be, or at least start it getting there with some good marketing, with some good, social media ads, with some good stuff. But it takes work and it takes effort. You need someone with that kind of dynamic voice. But I don't know how much we want to dwell on the CRA. I mean, that's a whole other thing, and the PC.
Well, one last thing I want to ask about this: is it a pie in the sky or a pipe dream to consider or hope for wanting the CRA as an organization to reach out to Joe Rogan or some other cigar-friendly podcasters like Bill Burr and Steve Harvey to say, "Hey, we want to put an ad on your podcast. We'll pay whatever your regular rates are. We want to put an ad on your podcast to advertise the CRA because and go through the list of reasons why it's important." Especially
I was
for cigar guys.
If I was running the CRA, that's exactly what I'd be doing. But it'd be like, "Hey, we like to buy ads on your show. Would you like to be a spokesperson for this organization?" I mean, the worst thing someone could say is no. But I'd be asking these guys. Steve Harvey's another great guy who's I think would be great. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever reached out to these people, but if they haven't, shame on them. Rocky and I had this conversation about this, our first podcast after COVID, when we got kicked out of the radio show, when we get kicked out of the studios and we had to go to this StreamYard format. We talked about it in 2021. And I don't think anybody's done anything about this kind of thing, but that's what they need.
Well, my first question, if I'm one of those guys, is, okay, you're asking me to ask people to join this organization. What does it do? How many people does it represent? How do you measure?
Part of the problem.
Right.
Part of the problem.
So the answer is going to be, I love cigars, but I'm not putting my name behind your bullshit organization. And
right.
If it's just a front for 9 manufacturers.
No, you're absolutely right, Skip. It's a revamping of the whole model, and even letting that guy who's a spokesperson have a say in what's going on, because ultimately that guy should be passionate about this industry just like we are, just like the consumers are.
Yeah, it's like this Hong Kong thing, which is kind of completely irrelevant to us. But let's say in Hawaii, for example, they try to pass a rule that says you basically can't buy cigars from Cigars International. Or let's say they pass a rule that says anyone born after 19 or 2022 can't buy tobacco ever. It's going to be 20 years before that affects anybody. But if tomorrow we became Canada, right? And sorry to pick on Canada, John, because there's a lot of ways we could probably do better being like Canada.
Sorry.
But if we were like Canada tomorrow, there would be a lot of consumers walking into a shop, and like you said, the backyard's on fire, and they would go like, what do I need to do as an individual to stop this? And it's too late. And you can't, like Luciano said in the chat, you can't drive people based on fear or whatever. You have to basically say, What is it you want to have happen as a guy who loves cigars are a huge part of your life? You give me a little money, I'm going to go help make those things happen. And you've got to show results of that. The CRA essentially gave up even giving a shit how many consumer members they had. They just gave away memberships bought by manufacturers or event holders. Like, you know.
I did it. I did
Right.
it at Great Smoke for many
Yeah,
years.
you give every single person that comes to the Great Smoke a membership, so we can say that there are at least there are some consumers who are a part of this.
We bought them. We paid for them.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That was it got to the point where that's the only thing they gave a shit about was that it didn't even matter. They weren't even trying to engage consumers. And so,
no.
Look, I don't want anyone to come away from this saying I don't support CRA. I am a deep to my core, a 25-year, 30-year cigar culture smoker. It's a huge part of my life. And the CRA as a concept is something that would be a really important thing for me if it worked. And whatever I can do to help make it work that way, I'm willing to step up and do that. But until then, let's not pretend it's going to work that way if we're not going to really make any real changes. And the PCA, you know, is the PCA. It's a trade show thing, and they're doing better than they ever have. And as a consumer, I could care less about the PCA.
Next year we should get like little golden microphones for everybody on the panel, and they can just.
Well,
but consumers shouldn't care about the PCA.
Right.
Why should consumers care about the PCA? The PCA is a trade organization. They shouldn't.
Right.
Well, and sort of tied into this, not necessarily directly, but I know that cigar producing countries have sort of their own, you know, we have the Nicaraguan Chamber of Tobacco, we have whatever organization runs Pro Cigar, the Dominican, you know, Department of, and then, you know, Habanos SA is sort of a different animal, you know, because it's mostly overseen by, you know, it's a for-profit
company.
Yeah. But, and I don't know if Honduras has an organization of that.
They do.
Okay. So of all those organizations through those different cigar producing countries, which one in your guys' experience, who know way, obviously, you know, I don't even know the names of them, but of these organizations in your experience, which ones are run properly and healthy, and which ones need some help? Charlie, start with you.
I mean, I don't like Pro Cigar. I think is the most professional of the bunch. I mean, like, here's the deal. There are some local issues that happen in these countries that these organizations do a really good job of quashing for the most part. There are some times in which the established manufacturers that control these organizations in a large way, or that just sort of bypass these organizations in a different way, will shove rules down throats that smaller factories may not particularly appreciate. But like, if the question is which one of these organizations is making a difference when it comes to lobbying regulations outside of their own countries, the answer is good luck. And in the case of like lobbying local issues within these countries, the Dominican Republic seems like it's probably an easier one. Nicaragua's got issues that are far larger than the cigar industry.
Yeah.
And cigar companies in Nicaragua have issues that are far larger than the cigar industry. So, and not like day-to-day pressing issues, and more like there are big picture things that they have no say over and will never have a say over, at least under the current iteration of how things work in these countries. But like, I think that the needs of these organizations are very different than the PCA and the CRA. And also, I think the needs of Pro Cigar, which represents sort of the elite group of Dominican manufacturers, with maybe a couple of exceptions of people who aren't part of them, they're very different than the other Dominican cigar organization, which represents a whole bunch of the smaller factories in Tamboril. You know, it's like having a conversation between the guy that's got a Honda Civic and the guy that's got a Rolls Royce. Like, they probably, not guaranteed here, but they probably have different issues facing themselves.
I mean, I can, as a member of one of these organizations, I can tell you that. So in Nicaragua, recently they abolished almost all chambers like this. All the Chamber of Commerce, all the industry trade organizations, they made them illegal and they dissolved them. There was only like 8 or 9 or something that remained, and the cigar industry chamber was one of them. Um, I would say generally, outside of just doing Puro Sabor, which is the main function of a lot of these organizations, Puro Humo or Pro Cigar, outside of that piece of it, the organization does a really good job of communicating and keeping things from across the industry in Esteli communicated very well. And as little issues come up, like new regulations or new taxes or problems we're having with exports or problems we're having with certain governmental agencies, you make one phone call to this organization. Hey, I've heard this from 5 or 6 people. We're working on it. They come back with, hey, we had these discussions with the government. This is what's been being done. It's been very effective. And, the money it costs me to be a member is easy for me to write a check every year. And I'm proud to be a member of it. And I think we would be in a worse place without it. And we continuously are working towards getting better. Right. So I think they're effective, at least within the country we're in.
But then we have the marijuana industry who comes in and absolutely is sweeping the country with legislation, with relatively no consumer.
It is consumer. That's the thing you don't understand, is that it is the marijuana movement is 100% consumer based. It is driven by demand from consumers and consumers demanding that their governments change rules. And then the trade organizations layer on top of that to go organize and make those things happen. Yeah, but it is the consumer demand that is driving the changes in marijuana.
Oh, there's no doubt that there's the demand. I just don't see a lot of the voice of the consumers getting involved legislatively.
I mean, what about in Ohio, though? Like, I would argue that was a very clear example of...
I'm not familiar, so, yeah.
So there was a ballot initiative in Ohio, I want to say, in the 2020 election that would have legalized marijuana there, except it would have created a super license system where only 10 manufacturers, I don't know if it was growers or if it was, product manufacturers, but it would have created a system where 10 people would get licenses and that would be the end of it. And the citizens of Ohio were lobbied by smaller manufacturer organizations, marijuana rights organizations, things like that, to lobby and to vote against this ballot measure, which did not pass because it had been written in a way that seemed like it was going to be way too corporate.
Yeah, but there again, the marijuana backyard was already on fire. It was illegal. People were going to jail. There were, whatever. And so it took 25 years for like kind of the normal 420 movement to actually start getting results. But it has been and has been a consumer demand, consumer activity driven thing.
And that's with 40 to 50 times the amount of users of versus cigars. So
right. Yep.
I mean, I think the cigar industry would be best to look inward and try to resolve the problems that it can identify for itself initially, because God knows any of these cigar podcasts, and we are, after all, just hashtag bloggers. Like, we can identify a ton of problems, seemingly, with these various organizations. It's really, really problematic if you're like, well, why don't the liquor companies have to deal with these same rules? And it's like, well, they have a lot more consumers, a lot more people care, and they have a lot more money. And I think it's a very similar story with marijuana.
Yeah. Risty says swag's better in the marijuana industry. Yeah. I mean, it's all about the swag.
It is.
Yeah. It's all about the swag. So we've been seeing a lot in the news really for a long time, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. Mainstream news. AI is all the rage. AI is being talked about constantly. And used more and more by many different industries, government entities, things like that. Where do you guys see the effects of AI, if at all, on the premium cigar industry, whether it's short term or long term? John, what do you think?
Well, first of all, can we just address the elephant in the room that there is no such thing as AI? I mean, for people who actually understand what it is, it's just elegant programming with a new database style. It has nothing to do with artificial intelligence. So let's just get that out there, because I tell you, the number of times over AI. But I mean, listen, we're in an age where it's the next age of automation, and this has been coming for a long time. It's the slowest moving iceberg for the last 50 years. Anyone who is in technology, I've been in technology my entire life, and this is a foregone conclusion. Every industry that can be automated will be automated, from transportation to manufacturing to retail. Interestingly enough, I think handmade cigars is probably one of the industries that will not be towards that from the manufacturing side, at least as far as I understand it, because number one, it's being produced in countries that are going to be naturally resistant to that type of process, just based on cost. So I don't think that that's something that's going to transform the industry. We talked about this in the last show. Let's get to the point where half the retailers in the United States have a point of sale system and an inventory tracking system, and then we can have a conversation about artificial intelligence. You can't even tell me what you have on the shelf or what you sold last week. Maybe AI is a little bit more advanced than the industry is quite ready for at this point.
That's a great point.
Love it.
Abe, what do you think about AI in the premium cigar world?
I think eventually manufacturers will figure out how much labor they can save, and all cigars will be rolled by robots, and there'll be one very special one, so that when all these other robots revolt and take over the factories, this one won't be affected, and it'll actually be working in Skip Martin's factory. Oh wait, that's a movie. No, that's a movie. No, I don't know. No idea.
Skip, is the AI bot currently working at Niga Sueño?
I won't even contribute to this conversation. I completely object to the entire subject. And cigar smoking, like masturbation, should be analog forever.
And autoerotic confusion.
Preach it.
Oh, sorry that you have to follow that comment, Charlie. But AI and premium cigars, is it a thing? Does it matter?
Yeah, I think it's going to matter. I think similar to sort of John's commentary about what it might do for POS systems and helping people that don't have, specialty in business understand kind of how their business actually works. I think that as those tools become easier to understand, I think that's going to become prevalent. I think that for, I guess everyone maybe except Skip in this conversation, I certainly think that how Google goes about implementing AI might have a massive impact on, the websites that the rest of us sort of really rely on quite heavily. I think that it's going to be more like smaller changes. I mean, I think you're seeing some of it, maybe it's not AI, as John points out, like a lot of things sort of similar to the blockchain and crypto. We use these singular terms to describe a lot of different things happening all at once. I mean, one thing that I imagine AI is, or that sort of genre of technology is definitely going to impact is on the agricultural side when it comes to growing. There are companies that are, targeting consumers, which means that they have to be prevalent in the industrial side of things. When it comes to, we're going to have satellite imagery of your lawn, and we're going to have you send in some soil samples to a company, and we're going to develop specific formulas or send you sort of specific formulas about how to grow your grass better, given, sort of these data points that we can, largely do without having to ever visit your lawn. And I imagine for people growing tobacco, getting better data about the soil and how the tobacco plants are reacting to it, and the climate, and what AI or whatever you want to call it thinks is going to happen in the next 15, 30 days. I think that's going to be the places where you see the largest impact.
Okay.
I like it.
So I have a question for Garrett.
Ooh, bring it.
Is it time?
I think it is time.
All right, guys, it is now time for this week's Numero de los Muertos. And as always, Numero de los Muertos brought to us by Smoke in.
Who?
Honest Steve here with the GOAT to tell you about Smokin's Cigar of the Month Club. Every month, I personally handpick 5 premium cigars. Another great feature is our Double Down Club. With a simple check mark, you can get double this great selections every month and save $10. Every month, there's a special discount code where if you like any of the selections, you can get them at a special discounted rate for our Cigar of the Month Club members. We've made it super simple. All you gotta do is log into your account. There's a little green button there. If it's green, you're active. You want to take a break, going out of town, simply hit the button and you'll deactivate your membership. We get the stuff out on the 28th of every month. Our membership bills on the 28th, and we get every member's package out on the 28th if it's a shipping day. All delivered to your door for $34.95. 5 great reasons on what makes Smokin' Cigar of the Month Club the best club out there. Check it out. Peace.
All right. Numero de los Muertos, episode 209. Garrett, what do you have for us this week?
All right. On average, in the United States of America, 115 people die from this thing
Yearly?
yearly.
On average in the United States.
Is it artificial intelligence robots killing workers in factories?
It is not AI.
Does it involve masturbation?
It does not involve anything sexual.
So
It doesn't have to be sexual, I guess.
Yeah, no. One of these days, Raul, it's going to be that answer, but not
It's not AI.
today. Is not that day.
It is not a microwave.
Is this workplace-related instance?
It is not.
Recreational.
No.
Masturbation can be recreational.
It can be.
And workplace.
And I mean, if you try hard enough. If you try hard enough.
It is not pooing. It is not cow trampling or tipping.
Is it any kind of sports activity?
It is not.
Recreational activity?
Are vehicles involved?
Vehicles could be involved,
Could be.
but don't go down that.
Are animals
Is this-
involved?
Animals are not.
Is this widespread across the United States, or is it limited to a certain number of states?
It would be U.S. wide.
Does it involve
US
water?
wide, okay.
No water is involved. Not roller coasters. Not falling asleep with cigarette or cigar.
That would be intended out of.
Yeah.
Not returning Puerto Ricans' phone calls.
Yeah. Raul.
Only 115 people a year.
115 people a year.
Is it
Not struck by lightning.
train accidents?
Not trains. No vehicles. Don't think.
Is it a medical procedure?
No.
Is food involved?
No food.
Disease?
No disease.
Is it a mode of transportation, travel?
No.
Does it involve technology?
No.
I'm trying to think things that are cigar like CPAP problems.
Love it. No, I should do that.
No.
Not carbon
would be in the
monoxide.
thousands.
Not flying.
Number of people that die from heart attacks after Coops yells at them for not saying on a press release is probably in the dozens. I would think.
Not a chore. Not garage doors.
Is it a crime?
COVID numbers. It is a crime.
Oh.
Oh.
People that are trapped in walls and die after trying to break into a store to steal something.
That's good. No. not that.
Oddly specific.
Yeah,
Super
oddly specific.
I'm trapped in
Oddly
the vestibule.
I might know of an incident.
Would it be considered an
I was going to
accident?
say, there sounds some like personal experience there, John.
It would not necessarily be considered an accident. Not a robbery.
Okay, give us some hints.
Not drug.
Is the person committing the crime the person dying, or is there
No.
a victim involved?
There's a victim involved.
Are weapons involved?
Yes.
Shankings in prisons.
Nope. Not shankings.
That's a good answer though. Abe.
That's a
That
great.
is a great guess.
Does it involve a weapon or
It does involve a weapon.
okay?
Is that
Not
weapon
cleaning
a
a gun.
firearm, or is that a specific type of weapon?
It is a specific. I'm looking for a specific type of weapon.
Number of people
killed by.
firearms that are malfunctioning and kills them.
No, because there's a
Wait.
It's not an
Did we
accident.
say
I
that
thought
firearms are? Did we say firearms are involved?
Firearms are involved. It is
Oh,
not
okay.
Russian roulette.
Duels?
People killed by fireworks.
Oh, not duels.
No.
Duels would be pretty cool.
Not accidental discharge. Not jarts. That's funny.
Is it at the firing range?
Firing range.
No, that's good though too. I should look at that one as well.
That's not a crime. That's
Is
not a
it
crime.
people hit by bullets after celebratory gunshot in the air?
A stray bullet? No. Let's get more specific on. So what I'm looking for is.
I think there was 115 people killed by stray bullets in Chicago last weekend.
Probably.
Yeah, exactly.
So the type of firearm
it's
is
regional.
what I'm looking for.
The type of firearm.
Yep.
Shotgun?
BB gun.
No.
Handgun?
It is a
No.
well, not necessarily handgun.
A blank gun. A starter pistol.
No. No muskets. Not paintball guns.
So it's not a cannon.
Is this the firearm malfunctioning?
No.
I thought it's not an accident.
It's not.
Oh, it's not an okay.
Yeah.
Not a
Yeah,
flare
people
gun.
killed by. It's
Not a
people
water
killed
gun.
by.
Not a BB gun. These are people that may consider themselves to be handy.
Oh, nail
nail
guns.
gun?
Not nail guns.
Ah.
Is it red green?
So they're actual.
because they're handsome and not handy.
These are actual, like, gunpowder projectile firearms.
Yes.
People
But
trying
it's a
to rob.
crime. But it's a crime. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
People trying to rob someone's
suicide is a
boat,
crime, but
and,
suicide
doesn't.
and they end up shooting themselves because the boat tips.
No.
Ghost gun
John.
does?
Instructors killing students. I love it.
Yeah, I think is it
Yes,
guns made
there it is.
by 3D printers?
At a carousel, a homemade gun.
What?
Yeah.
Yep, homemade guns.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Yeah, but 115 out of 330 million. That's a pretty low
Seems
number.
small.
it is very
Yeah.
small. Yep, homemade.
How
gun.
many people are making homemade guns?
Dude, you'd be
Wow,
surprised.
there's a lot
Dave.
of
People sign
homemade
up
upper
to
assemblies.
join the CRA.
Yeah, there's a lot of people making 3D printed guns.
Well, I gotta call you on something, because that wouldn't those still be like, is because the homemade gun doesn't work properly? I mean, wouldn't that still be accidental?
Well, murder.
No, he's saying they're just.
pretty
Yeah, he's saying that they got killed by a homemade gun.
You make a homemade gun, it's not traceable. There's no serial number. So how are you going to link it back to the person that killed him if there's no serial number?
Wow. I go back to that Clint Eastwood movie, The Line of Fire, when John Malkovich made that gun out. I love that movie, and yeah, I was like, okay, that. I mean, it's made out of resin. It's not. It doesn't have a steel barrel for the projectile to travel through. That gun's not going to survive being fired.
A little,
I mean,
a
you
little
could find
tidbit
out.
for you. a little tidbit for you, since you like that movie so much.
Yeah.
The scene where they're jumping across the rooftops and John Malkovich doesn't quite make it, and Clint Eastwood catches him, and then puts the revolver. No, I'm sorry. Clint Eastwood barely makes it, and John Malkovich is holding onto him, and then Clint Eastwood puts the gun up to his face, and then John Malkovich mouths the gun.
Yeah.
Ad-libbed, was never in the script.
Oh,
wow.
I love it.
That was just a John Malkovich in the moment move.
That's another reason for me to love that movie.
I love that movie.
That's awesome. Yeah. So that was this week's Numero de los Muertos. All right. So let's hit everybody with a lightning round question. So And the lightning round brought to us by J.C. Newman Cigar Company, America's oldest family-owned premium cigar maker, creators of the popular Brick House, Perla Del Mar, Diamond Crown, and the American. J.C. Newman Cigar Company operates out of their 112-year-old El Reloj cigar factory in historic Cigar City, Tampa, Florida. For more information on their cigars or visitor experience, please visit jcnewman.com. All right, so I'm going to hit everybody with the same question this week. And that is, which technology innovation has had the most impact on your life personally? Abe, start with you.
Oh, dude, why do you start with me? Jesus Christ. Which technology innovation?
Well, you're old.
Like
running water.
I mean, I was gonna say, I mean, like, how far are you going back? Because, I mean, the smartphone, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, smartphone changed everything in the universe, how everybody lives. So, yeah, I mean,
yeah, I agree.
If we're going that far back, I don't think you can say anything has changed the world or society or how we act or communicate, work, play, movies, everything, streaming, videos, smartphones. Most unbelievable invention in my lifetime.
Tyler says sous vide. I fucking love that answer.
Yes.
McTavish, what's your answer to that question?
The easy answer would, I think it was Brian that just said the air fryer. I was resistant to the air fryer, and I gotta say I'm fully in on the air fryer.
Shut the fuck up.
But talking broadly, it's got to be the internet. The internet and the Internet of Things has been the most transformative thing in my lifetime by far.
Skip, what about you?
I would say modern maps, like how do I get to this place? I remember when I was delivering papers as a young, when people actually read newspapers, the maps go where you had to go to like page 93 to, column F,
That's
number
right.
12 or whatever, or you'd had the AAA triptych to go on a road trip.
The
Now
old
you can basically, you can be anywhere in the world and go to Google Maps or Apple Maps or Waze, and you can get from one place to another without asking directions, without knowing where you're going.
Nice. Charlie,
I think that falls into the smartphone.
Yeah, phones, naps, all that stuff. It's all internet, computers, but that specifically, I was thinking the other day I had to get somewhere, and I was just like, it's unbelievable how easy this is.
Yeah.
Tyler, they said technology. I wasn't thinking clothing, but yeah, the underwear would have been up there. Absolutely.
Well,
are you talking about the Valhalla?
The Valhalla, man, living in Valhalla right now as we speak.
Well, in Crocs, I'll respectfully disagree with the Crocs comment, but to those who wear Crocs, you go ahead and rock your Crocs, and that's you do you.
Yeah, John Carney.
Charlie, what about you?
Yeah, it's also the internet. I mean, I think it's a.
Yeah, I mean the internet. The World Wide Web is turning 30 next year. That's kind of bonkers. I mean,
is it only 30?
The World Wide Web, 94.
Well, the World Wide Web, the internet.
Yeah, the internet's outdates. Yeah,
1979.
But yeah, the WWW is actually 94. Its official inception.
I like reliable condoms. That's good.
Let's jump into this week's notable smokables, brought to us by Luciano Cigars. Notable cigars, notable passion, notable purpose. And you guys know the drill. We name a cigar each week that we smoked recently that was notable to us. This could be a cigar that has been on the market for decades that we smoked for the first time in a long time, or a cigar that's brand new to the market that we smoked for the first time ever. So Abe, actually I started with you last time. Let's go with the surgeon, John McTavish. What's something you smoked recently that was notable to you?
Listen, I just smoked that Phosphor Connecticut, and I thought that was pretty lights out. But prior to that, the cigar that I sat down with just in the last few weeks was the Patina Anniversary. I thought that cigar was lights out, and in fact, I think we've published it. The entire panel was pretty gaga over it, which is a rare thing to get all four guys on board with that.
Very nice. Charlie, what about you?
I've not smoked a ton of cigars since coming back from the trade show, but I did smoke an old Opus Maduro during Spence Crawford / UFC Salt Lake City, whatever number that was. It was very
Fancy.
good, but quite mild because it was probably like 15 years old.
Yeah. All right, Skip. What's something you smoked recently that stood out?
So Charlie sent me a box of Opus X Magnum O's. First new media guy that ever sent me cigars. So I was enjoying those while I was in Austin. The best cigar that I smoked from the trade show, and I think I probably smoked more of them than any human alive to this date, is the All Saints Solamente, the new one he came out with. Yeah, I've probably smoked a full box of those, and I think I went over there every day, like 3-4 times a day to get one. So, and then I kind of stole all the samples that everybody else brought back. I really liked that cigar, and I liked it when it first came out, and I can't tell you if it's the same, but I really, really liked it. So that's something I'm probably going to buy 2 or 3 boxes of at least to keep and smoke.
Yeah. Abe, what about you?
Well, I'm gonna say 2 because I had 2 new cigars this week and I was impressed by both. To the point where I'd probably include them in our Cigar of the Month Club. I had on KMA for the first time the new 2012 Sumatra by Oscar Baladeras that I was actually thoroughly impressed with. I wouldn't say any of the other 2012s fall like in my palate, like, oh, I'd love to have again, but I actually enjoyed that one a lot. And I don't know, it was just hanging out with you guys and Skip smoking the cigar, but I've been thoroughly impressed by this one. I don't know if it's still going to be called White Panda by the time it hits the market, but I've thoroughly enjoyed this cigar all night.
Very nice. Justin, did you have a notable this week?
Yeah, it was the Tuxtla Tatuaje Miami 10th year anniversary.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I think that was in the Bon, was it Chasseur?
Bon Chasseur, yeah.
Yeah, that was the one that I had those notables.
Awesome. Garrett, what about you?
Mine was the Adventura La Llorona original release.
Okay.
And it was stupid.
For me, it was I smoked of all the cigars I brought home from the trade show, because as everybody knows, we only go there for the free samples. What I brought home, I smoked the new one from Jake Wyatt, the Maverick from Jake Wyatt. I enjoyed it. And full disclosure, I wasn't necessarily a big lover of the cigars. Not that they were bad, they just didn't really hit me just right. But this Maverick, I really enjoyed it a lot. I smoked it last Wednesday, and that cigar stood out to me this past week. So definitely outside of kind of from a design perspective and even a blending perspective, sort of outside of the wheelhouse of what they had already had on the market. So I enjoyed that one a lot. So that was this week's Notable Smokables, brought to you by Luciano Cigars, improving lives through fine cigars. Please visit lucianocigars.com to learn more. So to give you guys an idea of some coming attractions, next week, for the first time in a long time, and our, as always, coming attractions, brought to us by AJ Fernandez. Born and raised in Cuba, AJ Fernandez now produces unparalleled premium cigars in Esteli, Nicaragua. The AJ Fernandez portfolio of cigars provides blend strength and flavor profiles to match the preferences of any premium cigar consumer. Whether it's New World, Dias de Gloria, San Lotano, Enclave, or Bellas Artes, you are sure to be satisfied with a premium cigar from AJ Fernandez. It's been a long time since we've done a pairing show on How About That Cigar Live. So next week, we're going to do a pairing show on How About That Cigar Live. And the pairings are a mystery, so please be sure to tune in live to find out what we're going to be pairing. Could be food, could be beverage, could be chocolate. Who knows? But we're going to be putting together some lovely flavors with some other lovely flavors.
Underwear?
Underwear, maybe. We'll see.
Okay.
I don't know if I have any that are, ripe enough for the show, but we'll see.
Yeah.
So be sure to tune in for that. Gentlemen, it has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for being, once again, getting the band back together for episode 209 of another Cigar Industry Hive Mind. Sorry for the sirens. We got something going on here in little Forest Lake, Minnesota this evening.
Somebody's going to get dead.
Yeah, they're
Numero de los Muertos,
Well, they heard Numero de los Muertos and they came driving right over.
Yeah.
That guy's a gun.
The 3D printed gun.
The good
They've
thing
been
is
knocking.
my next door neighbor is a police detective. Right on the other side, I have EMTs, and then 5 doors down, I have state trooper, and then 2 doors past him, I have State Department of Corrections. So we have all the bases covered. We're totally safe in this neighborhood. And I got a fireman in my garage with Raul Ramos. So guys, thank you again for being on How About That Cigar Live. One of my favorite shows of the year is learning from you guys on this this journey that we take. So thank you so much again for being a part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right, all the viewers and listeners, thank you so much for being the best part of How About That Cigar Live. We're so grateful that you tuned in for episode 209. If you have questions, make sure to email us on the website, howaboutthatcigar.com. Be sure to follow us on all your favorite social media at HBT Cigar. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the Facebook page, and follow us so you never miss anything that we have going on. And of course, as we always say, until we see you guys next time, burn cigars,
Not bridges.
See you guys. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Any comments, opinions, viewpoints, or statements presented or uttered by guests on the HBTC podcast, HBTC live video streams, and all other media from HBT Media LLC are solely those of the individual and do not necessarily represent the opinions or viewpoints of How About That Cigar or its parent company, HBT Media LLC, any of our advertising partners, or the premium cigar industry. The primary purpose of How About That Cigar is to entertain and to encourage activity and growth within the community of people who enjoy or want to learn about the enjoyment of premium cigars.